just solved the mystery of Laura Branigan's death, and the truth is out. For decades, fans only knew her as the voice behind Gloria and Self Control, an icon of the 1980s whose songs still find their way to new listeners.
Was that the one you picked to be released as a single? Did everybody agree on that?
Yes.
But the story of how she died is far more tragic than we thought. Behind the fame, the applause, and the anthems that defined a generation, Branigan was battling something she never spoke of, even to those closest to her. The reality of her final days is a chilling reminder that not everything is as it seems. Let's take a look. Rising Star: The Making of Laura Branigan. Laura Branigan's story began on July 3, 1952, in Mount Kisco, New York. Born the fourth of 5 children to Kathleen O'Hare Branigan and James Branigan Sr., she grew up in a modest Irish-American household that knew its share of hardship. Her parents' separation weighed heavily on her, but in those early years, music became her escape. Singing was not just a pastime for Branigan, it was a lifeline, something that offered comfort when stability seemed out of reach. At Byram Hills High School, her voice began turning heads. Teachers and classmates noticed she had something rare, a natural power that stood apart even in school productions. She joined the choir, performed in musicals, and by her senior year, it was clear she was meant for the stage. That determination led her to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City, where she studied both acting and singing. It was here that Branigan began honing her vocal skills and the stage presence that would one day captivate millions. Her path to recognition, however, was anything but straightforward. After graduation, Branigan worked small jobs while chasing her dream. She landed work as a backup singer for Leonard Cohen in the late 1970s, touring with him and absorbing everything she could about the industry. It was a valuable experience, but hardly the breakthrough she longed for. Record companies repeatedly turned her away, and for years she seemed stuck in the background. Yet Branigan never wavered. Those who knew her at the time described her as fiercely determined, unwilling to abandon the belief that her voice could carry her farther. That persistence paid off when she signed with Atlantic Records. In 1982, she released her debut album, Branigan, and with it came the track that would change everything, Gloria. Originally an Italian song, Branigan's version exploded onto the charts. In the United States, it stayed on the Billboard Hot 100 for 36 weeks. Abroad, it became an international hit, capturing the energy and mood of the decade. Practically overnight, Laura Branigan transformed from an overlooked backup singer into one of the most recognizable voices of the 1980s. But as with so many stories of sudden stardom, this was only the first act. While Gloria catapulted her to fame, it also set the stage for the pressures and private struggles that would follow. From this point on, Branigan's life would never be the same. The world knew her as a superstar, but the personal story unfolding behind the curtain would ultimately lead to one of music's most tragic endings. At the height of fame. By the mid-1980s, Laura Branigan was more than a rising star. She was a household name. After Gloria ignited her career in 1982, she followed up with a string of hits that cemented her place in the pop landscape. Songs like Solitaire, How Am I Supposed to Live Without You, and especially Self Control, demonstrated her remarkable vocal power and versatility. Each track carried her unmistakable emotional intensity, something that separated her from many of her contemporaries. Her 1984 album, Self Control, proved to be the peak of her commercial success. The title track, with its darker, edgier production, became her biggest international hit, topping charts across Europe and introducing her to audiences far beyond America. The accompanying music video, atmospheric and provocative, gained heavy rotation on MTV, helping to define her image in an era when visuals were becoming as important as the music itself. This combination of commanding vocals and magnetic screen presence made Branigan a global sensation. Concert tours quickly followed, drawing sold-out crowds across the United States, South America, Europe, and Asia. Those who saw her live performances often described them as electric. Unlike many pop acts of the time, Branigan sang with raw intensity, pouring genuine emotion into each note. She wasn't just performing songs, she was embodying them. On stage, she projected strength and confidence, her soaring voice carrying through arenas and outdoor venues alike. To her fans, Laura Branigan appeared unstoppable. Her music also began reaching audiences through other avenues. Tracks appeared on film soundtracks such as Ghostbusters and Coming to America, further embedding her into pop culture. Winning the grand prize at the Tokyo Music Festival for her performance of The Lucky One demonstrated her international appeal and gave her credibility as not just a pop act, but a true vocalist capable of commanding any stage. By the end of the decade, Branigan had sold more than 10 million records in the United States alone, with millions more worldwide. Gold and platinum albums, TV appearances, and constant radio play made her a fixture of the decade. She had become part of the soundscape of the 1980s, her voice instantly recognizable, her presence unforgettable. Yet even at the height of her fame, subtle cracks were beginning to form. The music industry is notoriously fickle, and trends change quickly. While Branigan was still basking in the glow of her success, younger artists were emerging, new sounds were dominating, and the pressure to stay on top was relentless. Fans saw the glamour, the sold-out tours, and the iconic videos. What they didn't see was the mounting weight of expectation pressing down on her behind the scenes. For Laura Branigan, the 1980s represented both her highest triumphs and the beginning of struggles that would eventually consume her. The voice that had captivated millions was as powerful as ever, but the personal cost of sustaining that success was quietly starting to take its toll. The hidden struggles behind the spotlight. On the surface, Laura Branigan seemed to have it all: chart-topping singles, international tours, and a reputation as one of the most powerful vocalists of her generation. But behind the applause and flashing cameras, she was quietly battling struggles that even her closest fans never suspected. The first challenge was the relentless pressure to stay relevant. Pop music in the 1980s was a brutal business. New acts were constantly appearing, armed with fresh sounds and bold images. For Branigan, this meant a never-ending fight to hold her place at the top. Record executives pushed her to adapt to shifting trends, often steering her toward material that didn't fully align with her instincts. While her voice remained her strongest weapon, the constant need to reinvent herself created deep frustration. Branigan wanted to sing music that felt true, but more often than not, commercial demands dictated her direction. The scrutiny from the media added another layer of stress. Every move she made, from her fashion choices to her personal life, became a subject for public commentary. In an industry where women were often judged as much for their appearance as for their talent, Branigan faced the same invasive criticisms. Behind the dazzling performances, she struggled with the burden of being constantly analyzed, a weight that left her feeling increasingly vulnerable. Isolation also became a recurring theme in her life. While she was adored by fans across the globe, the reality of constant touring and public attention left her with little time to cultivate deep personal connections. The more famous she became, the more confined her world grew. Privacy was scarce, and even when surrounded by crowds, she often felt profoundly alone. Those who knew her described a woman who was warm and genuine, but also intensely private, someone who kept her inner world tightly guarded. All of this combined to create a hidden emotional toll. The exhaustion of trying to balance commercial pressures, media scrutiny, and personal isolation left Branigan drained. Unlike the strong, confident image she projected on stage, in private, she wrestled with self-doubt and fatigue. Yet she refused to let the world see her vulnerability. Instead, she pressed on, pouring everything into her performances, as though music itself was the only thing holding her together. For many fans, Branigan's soaring voice and commanding stage presence symbolized strength. But the reality was far more complicated. Beneath the spotlight was a woman grappling with the same insecurities and struggles that fame so often hides. And as the years went on, these private battles only deepened, setting the stage for an even greater tragedy that would one day shock the world. Love and Loss: The Death of Larry Krutek. If Laura Branigan's career defined her public image, her marriage to Larry Krutek defined her private world. Krutek, a successful lawyer, was not just her husband, but her anchor, someone who supported her ambitions while offering the stability she often lacked in the whirlwind of fame. Friends described their relationship as deeply affectionate, a partnership built on loyalty and quiet strength. For Branigan, who had grown up facing family challenges and the relentless demands of stardom, Larry was a source of comfort she could always return to. But in 1994, their lives were shaken by devastating news. Krutek had been diagnosed with colon cancer. The prognosis was grim, and doctors gave him only months to live. For Branigan, the choice was immediate and unwavering. She put her career on hold and dedicated herself fully to his care. At a time when her own professional struggles were mounting, she abandoned music almost entirely to be by his side. It was a decision that reflected her devotion and her ability to sacrifice the spotlight for the person who mattered most. The battle against cancer was long and painful. For nearly 2 years, Branigan was both caregiver and emotional support, watching helplessly as her husband's health deteriorated. The woman who had commanded stages across the world was now quietly living through one of the hardest fights of her life. When Krutek passed away in June 1996 at the age of 60, Branigan was left shattered. The man who had been her greatest source of strength was gone, and with him went much of the stability she had worked so hard to build. In the aftermath, Branigan retreated even further from the public eye. She had always been a private person, but the grief from losing Larry deepened her isolation. Fans who remembered her soaring vocals and powerful stage presence were left wondering why she seemed to vanish so abruptly from the music scene. The truth was simple: her heart was broken. Professionally, the impact was equally profound. Without Larry's encouragement, Branigan found it increasingly difficult to re-enter an industry that had already begun shifting away from her signature style. The confidence that had once defined her performances was replaced with hesitation. While she attempted to resume her career in the years that followed, the fire that had once fueled her was dimmed. Looking back, Larry Krutek's death marked a turning point in Laura Branigan's life. It was not just the loss of a husband, it was the loss of her foundation, the person who had given her balance amid the chaos of fame. From this moment on, Branigan's journey became one of survival, with grief shaping nearly every decision she made until her own untimely end. Retreat from fame and hints of a comeback. After Larry Krutek's death, Laura Branigan stepped away from the stage almost entirely. She retreated to East Quogue, a quiet town on Long Island, far removed from the pressures of fame. Fans, however, never forgot her. Throughout the late 1990s and early 2000s, whispers of a possible comeback surfaced. Branigan herself seemed torn. While she remained deeply affected by her husband's passing, music had always been her lifeline, and the pull to return was undeniable. Small projects hinted at a re-emergence. She began exploring new material, and loyal followers hoped that the powerhouse voice behind Gloria and Self Control would once again take its place in the spotlight. But setbacks came quickly. In 2001, Branigan suffered a serious accident at her lakeside home when she fell from a ladder. The fall broke both of her legs, leaving her bedridden and forcing her into a long, grueling recovery. Despite this, her determination remained. By 2002, one of her signature songs, Self Control, found new life when it was featured on the soundtrack of the hit video game Grand Theft Auto: Vice City. Younger generations, many of whom had not grown up with her music, suddenly discovered her unmistakable voice. Online, the track began to surge in popularity, proving that Branigan's appeal had not faded with time. The renewed attention gave her hope. She began making tentative steps toward a return, performing at select shows and quietly working on new ideas. Those close to her recalled that she spoke of the future with cautious optimism. Though she was never one to seek headlines, Branigan believed she still had something to give. She saw her music as unfinished business, a chance to reconnect with the passion that had defined her at her peak. Yet beneath the surface, another battle was brewing, one far more dangerous than career setbacks or broken bones. Unknown to Branigan, the persistent headaches and fatigue she endured were not simply the aftermath of stress or aging. They were the early signs of a far darker problem, one that would tragically cut short the comeback she longed to make. The silent killer, years of unexplained pain. Even as Laura Branigan considered her return to music, her health was quietly deteriorating. Friends later recalled how she often complained of headaches that came and went without warning. Sometimes they were sharp and sudden, other times a dull, nagging pain that lingered for days. Fatigue became a constant presence, draining her energy in ways she struggled to explain. To those around her, she seemed tired but determined, unwilling to let discomfort slow her down. To Branigan herself, the symptoms felt like the inevitable toll of stress, grief, and age. But these were not ordinary headaches. Unknown to her, Branigan was living with a brain aneurysm, a condition in which a blood vessel in the brain weakens and bulges, creating the risk of a sudden, fatal rupture. The danger was immense, yet the signs were subtle, often mistaken for everyday ailments like migraines. Without specialized tests, such conditions are notoriously difficult to detect. Branigan never underwent those tests. She dismissed her pain as something she could endure, a private battle she chose not to share publicly. Her resilience, the same trait that had carried her through career struggles and personal tragedy, now worked against her. Determined not to appear weak, she pushed through the pain, focusing on the idea of a comeback and telling herself that the headaches were temporary. Medical experts note that aneurysms often remain undetected until it is too late. Warning signs can masquerade as everyday health issues such as headaches, blurred vision, or fatigue. Unless a patient seeks urgent medical evaluation, the underlying cause can remain hidden. For Branigan, this meant she was unknowingly carrying a ticking time bomb inside her brain, one that would determine the course of her final days. As the early 2000s progressed, Branigan's health struggles deepened, though she continued to keep them private. Fans remained unaware, remembering only the powerful voice and stage presence that had once defined her. What they did not see, and what Branigan herself may never have fully understood, was that her body was already warning her of the tragedy to come. The final days and the shocking truth revealed. On August 26, 2004, Laura Branigan's life ended suddenly and without warning. She was just 52 years old when she died in her sleep. To the outside world, the news was shocking. There had been no public indication of illness, no suggestion that anything was seriously wrong. For many fans, it seemed impossible that a woman who had once commanded stages with such force and vitality could vanish so quietly. At first, confusion surrounded even the basic facts. Some news outlets, relying on incorrect information, reported that Branigan was only 47 at the time of her death. The Associated Press eventually issued a correction, but the error reflected how little was truly known about her final years. To the public, her sudden passing was a mystery. To those closer to her, it was the devastating conclusion to a hidden battle she had fought in silence. The autopsy revealed the truth. Laura Branigan had died from a cerebral aneurysm. The headaches she had endured for years, often brushing them off as stress or exhaustion, had been the early warning signs of a condition far more dangerous than she realized. The aneurysm had gone undiagnosed, untreated, and ultimately ruptured, ending her life instantly. This revelation reframed everything fans thought they knew about her death. The tragedy was not only that she was taken too soon, but that her passing was preventable. If the aneurysm had been detected earlier, if the headaches had been investigated with the right medical tests, Branigan might have survived. Instead, the very resilience and privacy that defined her personality kept her from seeking the care that could have saved her. The truth is out. The mystery of Laura Branigan's death has finally been solved, and it is far more tragic than anyone could have imagined. She had been living for years with a silent killer, a condition she likely never fully understood. Fans who once believed her sudden passing was simply fate now know it was the heartbreaking result of an invisible, undiagnosed illness. Adding to the poignancy is the timing. Branigan had been speaking of a comeback, hinting at new projects and dreaming of a return to the spotlight. She was poised to remind the world of her extraordinary voice. Instead, her story ended with silence. What should have been a new chapter in her career became a devastating epilogue. leaving fans to wonder what could have been. In the end, the mystery of Laura Branigan's death was not just about how she died, but why her suffering went unnoticed. The reality is that she spent her final years in pain, holding on to hope for the future, even as her body carried a fatal secret. And that truth makes her story far more tragic than we ever thought. How the mystery of her death changed how we remember her. Laura Branigan's death shocked fans not only because it was sudden, but because it revealed how little the world truly knew about her private struggles. The discovery that she had lived with an undiagnosed aneurysm, one that left her in pain for years, transformed her passing from a sudden loss into a story of silent suffering. It was far more tragic than anyone had first believed. And yet, even in death, Branigan's voice continues to resonate across generations. Her signature hit, Gloria, remains her most enduring anthem. In 2019, the song became an unlikely sports phenomenon when the St. Louis Blues hockey team adopted it as their victory anthem during their Stanley Cup run. Suddenly, Branigan's music was blaring in arenas once again, inspiring a whole new audience that had not even been alive during her peak in the 1980s. Streaming services reported massive spikes in her music, proving that her voice was still as powerful as ever in connecting with listeners decades later. Other classics, including Self Control and Solitaire, have maintained their place in pop culture, resurfacing in films, television, and video games. These unexpected revivals showed that Branigan's influence had never truly disappeared. It was simply waiting to be rediscovered. Her fans have also played a crucial role in preserving her memory. Online communities, tribute events, and fan clubs keep her story alive, often correcting the record when misinformation surfaces. The Associated Press's mistaken report that she was only 47 at her death was later corrected in part because of fans' dedication to ensuring her legacy was treated with accuracy and respect. For them, Branigan was more than a pop star. She was a voice that spoke to their lives, their emotions, and their memories of a vibrant era. The mystery surrounding her death may have been solved, but it adds a haunting new dimension to her legacy. Knowing what she endured privately, fans now hear her songs differently, with greater awareness of the struggles that lie behind the soaring vocals. In that sense, Branigan's music has taken on an even deeper resonance, reminding us that behind every great voice is a human story, fragile and fleeting. Do you think Laura Branigan's tragic death changed the way we interpret her music, making her songs feel even more powerful now that we know the hidden struggles she carried? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.